My favorite artifact is the ship itself, and that is a mosaic of the stern of the vessel, and you can see completely different to the Belitung wreck, which was very fine planks stitched together. These are massive, almost square section planks, and they're lying flat out on the seabed. They're probably collapsed because the fastening in this case was iron nails. Iron nails were driven in diagonally from each plank into the plank below them, and they've all rusted away, and the plank is, the whole ship has collapsed out, and it's now flat on the seabed. You can't see any sort of a relief in the hull design. But you can see on top, this is after we've removed the jars obviously, that there are some cross-sectional timbers here. That's a bulkhead, and next to it is a frame. And the Chinese are the ones that introduced bulkheads to shipbuilding. So this is a Chinese junk, and she was sailing, but instead of with a complete cargo of Chinese ceramics, she was sailing with a very wide-ranging cargo, which she'd picked up all the way down from China, sneaked out of China during that ban on private trade, and traded with Thailand, possibly Malaysia, possibly even Singapore. And then she was on the way down further south from her location in Karamata Strait towards potentially Tuban in eastern Java, where Majapahit Kingdom was had their capital. And from this design here, we see it lying flat on the seabed. There is no keel. So the Chinese, actually, they were so late in the game when it came to trading with Southeast Asia in their own vessels, they adopted the Southeast Asian ship construction, which was a V-shaped hull, much more suited to sailing on the high seas and trying to sail into the wind to any extent. But all the coastal and the riverine craft in China were flat-bottom to get over the shallow sandbanks. And this is one instance where a flat-bottom vessel has actually been used for voyaging on the high seas. Nick Birmingham, the same guy that did the model for the Belitung wreck, did the model for this one as well, the Bakau wreck. His flat bottom is not that emphasized, but it is flat. There's no keel itself. Some of the Chinese vessels actually called the keel a dragon spine. But in this drawing of a flat bottom vessel, they've got these extra keels there called lee boards, and they were used in fact by the Dutch coastal vessels in the early 16th, 17th century. They could pivot down, so they'd pull them up with ropes up to the side of the vessel, but when they're trying to sail upwind, then they could pivot down and they stop the vessel drifting to the side when they're trying to sail into the wind. When you're sailing downwind, you have no need for them. And in fact, the trade from China down to Southeast Asia was almost a complete downwind trade. They came down in the northeast monsoon, which blew from November through to March every year. That gave them a few months to trade, and then they could sail up in the southwest monsoon, which is sort of May, June, July, August. So it was perfectly suited to coming down on one monsoon, trading, and then returning on the next. So that's the vessel we have now for representing a Chinese junk, and virtually every wreck that's found in the 14th century, early 15th century is a Chinese junk. It doesn't imply that Southeast Asian vessels were forced out, but they were certainly complemented to a large extent by the Chinese junks coming into that time. And unfortunately, the archaeological record is so scant that we can't draw serious conclusions just based on that. We have to link it with textual information and finds on the land sites. So I now have the option of handing over to questions, depending on what timing you have for lunch, or there's one other wreck which I could discuss, which is quite a bit later at 1608, but it's still sort of related because of the destination. So up to you.